Hi everyone, it's Bob Pulver. In this episode, I am joined by Rachel Cossar, CEO and co-founder of Virtual Sapiens. Rachel discusses the integration of AI in coaching and communication, emphasizing its potential to democratize access to feedback and improve talent assessment and hiring. She highlights the importance of soft skills and the need for continuous learning and reskilling in the AI-driven workforce. Our conversation also explores AI's role in sports, the challenges in artistic fields, and the necessity of human feedback to complement AI tools. As you'll hear in each episode, my esteemed guests provide recommendations on how to elevate one's AIQ, so be sure to listen to Rachel's top takeaways. I hope you enjoy the discussion, and thanks for tuning in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. I'm your host, Bob Pulver. With me today is Rachel Cossar, who is the CEO and co-founder of Virtual Sapiens. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me, Bob. It's great to be here.
My pleasure. Good to see you again. So why don't you give listeners just a brief sort of TLDR of your background, although I will, I'm sure, ask you a couple questions about some of your prior career.
Yeah, it's going to sound weird at the high level because the jump seems so large, but I used to be a professional ballet dancer. Before that, I was a rhythmic gymnast on the Canadian national team. So very athletic, performance-based background. And when I retired in 2016, and maybe it's like a weird word for me to use, but it was retirement. I started coaching people actually in presence and body language and nonverbals, because that was an area that I was such a master in and that I found people often neglected in other professional settings. And so I did that for a number of years and loved it, and really think that there's so much power for people to harness in that sense. And then during the pandemic, when everything went online, I actually found that there was an opportunity to introduce some AI into the equation to make the type of coaching that I was doing in a very non-scalable way, make it more accessible, make it more scalable for people.
That's fascinating. I mean, we'll get into this over the course of this conversation, but I think it just highlights some things that I think about when I think about people's potential. And when you have a disruptive, technology or any type of massive, change, whether it was, the internet or social media and, other big changes in the way that we do our work or live our lives, that they do have a lot of transferable skills that they've maybe never used and maybe never even had anyone sort of pinpoint or assess, what those other transferable skills might be. But obviously you've made a successful pivot and have focused on a lot of what we used to call soft skills, but, human skills, which, I would argue are the more durable skills these days, about AI increasing its capability, taking on tasks that we used to think of as purely human tasks. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think definitely having the ability to understand how very specific skills or skills that may feel very specific to a context can actually be leveraged in other scenarios is a superpower. I had a friend in the coaching space who called this metacognition, which is it's just a type of perspective and thinking where you are able to see parallels running between disparate worlds and then bring them together. And oftentimes, I've always just been a believer of, if everyone's had their own unique experience. And if someone ever moves from one very specific world to another, their perspective almost immediately becomes so much more interesting because it's most likely something that this other world has never benefited from, right? And I think you see that across the board. And you think about any startup or company that has to pivot. A company or technology might have started with one very specific use case, and that may not have worked, or maybe you pushed it to its limit and then you pivoted, kept something core and essential and pivoted to a very different space and then had a lot of success there too. I think it's the same principle.
Yeah, no, I agree. I guess when I think about how we're assessing talent today, whether that's in a pre-hire, behavioral or psychometric assessment, or it's how we're understanding people's potential once they're in an organization through learning and development, talent management, career progression. I guess we still have a long way to go is where I'm going in terms of, people managers and leadership really using the right levers I guess is one way to think about it to really assess talent as opposed to, other areas, other sort of biases or other mechanisms where it's sort of going with your gut or going with, someone else's opinion who you may trust. I just feel like there's still a lack of true like data backed decisions about people's potential.
I think AI presents some really interesting, almost like countering realities when it comes to hiring, because on the one hand, as you said, like people managers, hiring managers, recruiters, they're the ones who are evaluating candidates, and we know how biased humans are in their decision making and judgment. And it's one thing to give, a recruiting manager or a hiring manager like a framework and list of things that you're looking for, but oftentimes it comes down to how much they like the other person, right? Do they feel like they have a good energy and a good vibe or whatever? And that is what it is. When AI comes into the picture, on the one hand, I think it shows a lot of promise and potential, because you can at least know that every candidate is getting assessed by the same rubric that the AI has been trained for. The AI is always looking for the same types of behaviors, ones that they want or not. So now if the AI has been trained in a biased way, then that's obviously going to be an issue from the get-go. But if it's been trained in a way that is consistently accepted and adhered to and as objective as possible based on skills you're looking for, then I think that actually it could be a huge benefit to do some hiring in that perspective. Like we don't do any at Virtual Sapiens. We're very focused on AI as a coach, because then there are use cases where our behavioral AI could be used to sift through candidates, but from the beginning we've been a little uncomfortable with that, just because what I will say AI often lacks is the ability to understand context, right? And how behaviors changed based on specific contexts that it might not be trained or equipped to really understand, right? And then when it comes to hiring and making big decisions like that's a tricky space.
Yeah, no, I definitely respect your approach. I do think you're getting into trouble if you start trying to interpret, body. Same reason that, one way video interviews got certain solution providers in trouble, right? Seem like it's being super observant, but there's a lot that it's missing. And, if that were to be deployed at scale, to your point, that just, perpetuates and exacerbates the bias that we're trying to avoid. Obviously, when you think about responsible AI and being, ethical and fair and things like that, we've got to make sure we're taking a critical eye to where AI can help. And I love the focus of Virtual Sapiens, because I think anytime you're providing coaching, mentoring, tutoring, things like that, it's even if you found some, sort of hidden, bias, I feel like it's not in the role that it's playing. You could argue that even if a human was playing that role, the same or different, biases might still exist, right? It's still one other entity's opinion of, what it's trying to help you with, I guess.
This might not be the best example, but one example that's come across our path at Virtual Sapiens is with universities. And the use case is that universities can use our tool as a practice environment for students to go through their elevator pitch or go through their presentation and get feedback and on demand and have it be very convenient.
Get ready to turn up the volume on your HR game. I'm Jay Arnold, former musician turned HR leader and host of Backstage Pass, the HR Rockstar. Each episode pulls back the curtain on key HR topics, from leadership lessons and bold career pivots to the latest in HR tech and talent strategies, featuring the rock stars within their industries. If you're ready to shake up the status quo and amplify your impact, this is your all-access pass. You can catch the show on the Work-Defined Podcast Network and wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe now and let's rock the future of work together.
And what we're replacing is the structure that they had before, wherein students would work with one another within small groups or peer feedback groups, and then they would give each other feedback. And in principle, that sounds great, because you're like, great, we're teaching students how to give feedback effectively. We're teaching students how to receive feedback. We're building camaraderie, whatever. But in actuality, what ends up happening is that some student groups are really strong and people get great feedback and it's a valuable exercise. And then other student groups have students who are like not really participating effectively, or who give feedback that's like not thoughtful and they're not really spending time on it. And then what ends up happening is you get this very uneven, unequal experience. Whereas if you make sure that all students have access to our AI platform, everyone's getting access to the same kind of objective feedback based on the metrics we've developed. And everyone's getting access to this platform so they can run through as many practice sessions as they want without like having to depend on another human who might get fed up or, not really want to listen to them go through their pitch for the 10th time.
Right.
And so that, to your point of at least equity and access to coaching and feedback and analysis, AI, I think, presents a really interesting solution for those things.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've been thinking about use cases in higher education in general. And I think actually it's not even higher education because I think some of the basics should be taught much earlier than that. I mean, my daughter just finished her sophomore year of high school. And I mean, I know that she's, played around with different tools and, seen the results. I mean, even when you go to Google or Bing or whatever, you're still seeing some of that. But I know she's tried some of the other, LLM powered tools from some of the other vendors. And so, but from a school perspective, it's like they haven't caught up, just like a lot of organizations haven't really figured out how to set a policy or, what their strategy is. And so it's not surprising, yet still disappointing that the policy is, do your own work. Because I think there's opportunities, and you've probably seen this, you're closer to this than I am, but like even some of the big education platforms like, Khan Academy and some of those, they focus on providing AI powered like coaching, mentoring, and tutoring, as opposed to just give me a question and I'll give you the answer, right? So it's like we've got to separate where humans, you would have outsourced something anyway. This is sort of my general, AI versus human thought or a concept of like when it's appropriate to use AI and when it's not. I mean, if you were to outsource a task to another human being anyway, and therefore the help is not self-help, then what's the difference? If it's not giving you the answer, it's like using AI to write a resume. Why is that bad? I would have paid another human being, expert to do that anyway. So how can you consider that cheating? I guess I feel the same way about tutoring and getting people comfortable with this technology. I mean, this is just the latest. I mean, it's bigger and more impactful than just going digital and using digital devices. But just like your kids are growing up with being digital natives and using touchscreens from birth or infancy. I think everyone needs to get comfortable with AI and when it's appropriate to use it.
Yeah, I think even more so than, or taking it a step further from your example with the resume, a lot of people would just struggle through putting their resume together on their own and not necessarily even have the resources to hire someone to do it for them. And so the AI comes in as a very cost-effective way for them to upskill or up-level their own resume. It's like the Khan Academy mentoring and coaching and tutoring example is perfect because you'll still have wealthier families who are going to spend whatever it is, $40, $60 an hour on a private tutor for their kid. But there are so many other families who can't afford that. And so getting access to Khan Academy and the way that they're leveraging AI for education, like that's wonderful in terms of democratizing access to personalized coaching and feedback and mentoring.
Yeah, no, I think those tools are great. So are most of your clients using it on the talent, like for employees and that kind of coaching, or is it job candidates? But just tell me a little bit more about your, the demographic and your target.
And just to be clear, so Virtual Sapiens uses AI to help professionals master their presence and communication effectiveness. And so we tend to see a lot of client-facing professionals using our tool in a training environment, right? So whether that's a big organization using our presence portal as part of their new hire onboarding. So everyone who's starting at X company gets access to their presence portal and they get to practice, anything that they may be about to present, so they can get personalized feedback and really show up effectively from day one. sales professionals, customer success professionals. I think the talent acquisition space is really interesting as well. Recruiter management and recruiter training is an interesting one, because those recruiters, again, are representing the company when they go out and interview people. You want the best candidates to be interested in your company, so you want the recruiters to show up effectively as well. So those are some of the majority of the use cases we see. And I mentioned universities as well.
I guess just taking the talent acquisition piece a little bit further, I mean, there's as much as we think AI can help with the funnel, it seems like there's still a lot of organizations that put people through quite a number of interviews. So I imagine Virtual Sapiens could also be used could help the interviewees and the interviewers, just conduct a better, more effective, conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you first came up with the idea for Virtual Sapiens and you saw that there was an opportunity, I mean, how did you, because a lot of what I talk to my guests about is how do you improve your AI skills, your AI literacy? Like, how do you really understand just enough to know that I'm not just grabbing technology and then, as my new hammer and finding a bunch of nails, but you had a specific use case in mind, and then you investigated, that AI might.
Hey, this is William Tincup, and you should know about the You Should Know podcast. It's a topical, fun podcast with Ryan, myself, and a guest, or guests, plural sometimes, and we tackle the most timely topics of the day. Give it a look, give it a listen, and subscribe. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Carmen Hudson. I'm the host of the Recruiting Book Club, and we're starting our second season. I'm so excited to bring to you another set of guests of recruiters who have written books. We are excited to have some very special guests this season. We've got Shally, we've got Craig Fisher, James Ellis, and quite a few other people that we're going to bring on board to tell us about what they wrote, why they wrote it, and maybe we'll veer off into a conversation about recruiting on all types of topics and subjects that happen in our industry. So I hope you can join us. I'm excited.
Be one, solution to this problem, to be able to scale something to help, a lot more people. How did you go through that?
Yeah. So the coaching space for a while has been an area that could benefit from added use of technology. The biggest problem, or the barrier to having technology really add some scale to coaching before the pandemic, was that people just weren't on video, right? And so you needed video as the intermediary to layer the AI on top so that AI could provide feedback, right? And that didn't necessarily have to be meetings on video, but it had to at least be like, okay, I'm going to record myself and then I'm going to upload the recording. And it was just a little bit too cumbersome, right, before the pandemic. And what the pandemic changed was that all of a sudden video really became a channel of communication. And with that came many opportunities in terms of how you might leverage AI to provide some of the coaching that I used to do very non-scalably in person.
Yeah.
And so it was almost like the pandemic needed to happen, or not the pandemic needed to happen, but something needed to happen to make video really rise to the top in terms of a very normal way for people to get online and communicate with someone else.
Would an organization sign up and give everyone access to specific, you get a certain number of seats? I'm just wondering, like, if somebody had an ad hoc request, like they don't normally, give presentations, or they're not normally asked to do interviews, but now they're asked to do that. Or I guess it's a sort of licensing and business model kind of question. Like if somebody had just ad hoc, infrequent, and, just needs, would they be able to access the platform?
Yeah. So we focus on like B2B license models. We have more of a B2B and reseller business structure. That said, anyone can go to our website. Anyone with a professional email can go to our website and check out our product. We have a free trial version that you can give a try and see how you feel like talking to the video and getting feedback. It's very specific. It's a very new way for people to receive feedback. But yeah, typically we'll sell to an organization, and then that organization will allocate those licenses based on, wherever within the organization they think it might be most impactful.
Would people managers, like let's say you're a sales executive and you've onboarded a bunch of people. I mean, do you provide like like sort of a leadership dashboard that says, where people might need continued practice?
Yeah. Like one of the most elegant ways that you can interact with our product as an organization is to have everyone go through an initial certification of presence readiness. Like how does this entire sales team rank in terms of their presence and the way they show up? And then anyone who's scoring below like a certain percent or anyone who might be lagging, you could have them continue to receive opportunities for practice and coaching, and maybe even upgrade and get like a human coach to jump in and help this individual. Or as a manager, maybe you would spend a little more time coaching this individual on their communication in terms of the way they're showing up. So the assessment tool, I think, gives organizations a way to very quickly and very efficiently understand where different employees are showing up on this like spectrum of very confident, effective communication, which in and of itself is something that would have been very, very, very difficult, if not impossible to do before.
Yeah, that's very cool. I think everyone could probably use this, and I know I could use it. I always balked at signing up for like Toastmasters or anything like that, just because it makes you uncomfortable, right? But that's part of being in these roles and succeeding in these roles, is you've got to have that confidence and that comfort level to understand the subconscious sort of behaviors that might be inhibiting.
Yeah. Being a professional, being a human in today's day and age, and actually at any point involved some kind of discomfort, and growth requires discomfort because you're building new muscle. You're stretching yourself beyond your like more limited comfort zone, right? And I talk about that a lot because I think sometimes people confuse growth and working through discomfort with being inauthentic, right? They'll be like, oh, well, that's not me. And it's like, well, if you are constantly evolving, then it could be you. Like being an effective, confident communicator could be you, but it will require work and effort and practice. And at some point, feeling a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate that. I think about imposter syndrome as well, right? You might start that way, but with the right coaching and practice or whatever, like I guess you become who you hoped you could become, right? But like you said, it's part of flexing new muscles and adapting, right? I think that's one of the big things that people need to understand with AI. I mean, it will continue to take on new tasks and be capable of more. And we're seeing that happen faster than pretty much any other technology has, at least in terms of generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I think got to be adaptable. You've got to find, not necessarily a new lane, but if, work is redesigned and your role, changes, you've got to figure out either how do I leverage some of these AI powered tools to, upskill myself and continue on a trajectory that you think still has longevity, or take some of those transferable skills, certainly identify them first, but then, take them and potentially sort of reskill to another role. So it seems like Virtual Sapiens could even be used in that context, right? Like, well, I didn't think I'd be good at this other role, but you know what? Let me make sure I'm comfortable and confident talking to, a potential new manager or new leader, that I have the capability to reskill. I think that's, if more people did that, we'd probably be in a better position in terms of, reskilling and upskilling, instead of trying to hire net new people, because we don't think our current population or we don't think there's good candidates for these new roles.
Right. Well, this goes back to something you said earlier, Bob. We all know the world is changing, and these soft skills that may have been perceived to be somehow not as important or critical are now actually so much more of what makes us clearly human.
Have you ever wondered what really makes a generation tick? Who gets to pick the name? And why the slang keeps changing? Don't worry, I can help. My name's Dr. Megan Grace. On #Gen Z, I share the voices and experiences of Generation Z, how they're different from other generations, what moves them, and why they do what they do. In each episode, we go beyond the buzzwords and the stereotypes to dive into real conversations and the insights that matter to making intergenerational collaboration a reality. You can catch #Gen Z on the Work to Find podcast network and wherever you listen to podcasts.
right? And it's true that the computers and the technology and the AI can do certain analytical things and certain data-oriented things just better and faster, right? But some of that critical thinking and some of that communication and context building and understanding, like that falls to the human in terms of capabilities and nuance and creativity and all that. And so like even for myself though, like I would never have thought that I would have become an expert on video specific presence and communication using AI to help people unlock more potential in that space. Like I would never have thought that. And yet here we are. Right. And so there's so much, when a world is disrupted, there are lots of opportunities that come out, and reskilling to fit some of those opportunities is a great way for people to become more engaged with this new world.
When you were looking at opportunities for technology to improve your presence, did you ever look at like, if you want, like, let's say you wanted to stay in gymnastics or in ballet, like could AI coach, potential ballet dancers on their form and their, could you basically video them and spot areas for improvement?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when it comes to technique, yes, the technique is technique. It's all about alignment and the different relationships between body parts and physics and all that. So you could definitely have like a recording of you executing a specific move perfectly, and then continuing to record yourself. And anytime you're not executing it properly, you can see why. You can understand very clearly why. This time I did this and the alignment between my hips and my knees was this. And then when I did it incorrectly, the alignment was off. That's why I can see that. Like the visual representation of sports and athletics in terms of improvement is a big area where I think AI could be very helpful. And it already is in some sports, right? Like there's an example with like baseball and looking at the pitchers and the catchers and understanding some of the different relationships between those dynamics. Like that's a really compelling space. I think it's much more challenging. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think it's a lot more challenging when you think about the artistry. Like, I don't know that the AI would be that helpful in that sense, because humans themselves are like, how do you even define that? Like, if you can't define it, the AI can't be taught, and therefore the AI just won't know.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think golf would be a good example. I think there's already, those simulators where you do, super slow-mo, and you can see exactly how the angle of the face of the club, how you're striking the ball. But you're right. I mean, it's plenty of people that have been successful whose, swings might be quite different. Right. So sometimes it's just, you've found a motion and a pattern that works. And how would AI, tell you hitter to change their stroke? It just seems awkward.
That's interesting. That just begs the question of like relativity. It can't, like, it might not work across diverse body types, but it could work very well for one person's training or understanding the way one person might move predictably, right? Like that could be really interesting too.
So that got me thinking about, like, because everyone's different and certain, now shifting back to, employees, like if you have a candidate that's, neurodiverse or has some sort of disability, like how do you account for that so that the advice is still, instructive and encouraging without being too critical, assuming that there's some, physical impediment or anomaly or like that? Can you accommodate for that?
We've been really aware of how we give feedback, how the AI gives feedback, and making sure that the AI is not overly prescriptive. So for example, if we're looking at hand gestures as one of the metrics of communication effectiveness, right? Like we know research shows that if you're using hand gestures effectively, it helps your audience retain more of what you're saying. It makes you more dynamic and energized and expressive as a speaker. These are all good things. If, say, for example, one of the users like only has one hand, right? Our AI feedback is focused on whether and to what degree we see hand gestures moving in the frame, right? Are we seeing too many? Are we not seeing any at all? Are we seeing just the right amount? The feedback the user would get is along those lines, and not, we want to see like two hands always doing specific things and, steepling because this is a powerful posture, right? Like we're not going to tell someone what to do with their hands specifically. We have learning libraries and content. You can go and learn. We'll point you in that direction, but we're not going to be so prescriptive as to tell you exactly what you should do, because we don't want humans to feel like they need to be cookie cutter communicators. We want to give feedback that's based on your behaviors and then give you suggestions on how you might improve that specific metric, right? And all of that's based on communication best practices. I think, there are so many different, the spectrum is so diverse. And so we have to be very careful in that regard. But at the end of the day, we're here to provide feedback that is going to help people communicate effectively. And so, if someone is neurodivergent, and we're like, your posture is slouched, that's valid feedback. And if their posture is slouched because of certain levels of discomfort they have in even showing up on camera, which is very common, right? I wouldn't even say that's neurodivergent. Mm-hmm. That's just straight up common. Then it's up to them to decide how they might want to alter that or change that or rewire that behavior, right? So it's okay to give people constructive feedback. I don't think you want to be overly prescriptive, but giving people feedback is fine. If they've signed up to use our tool, they're expecting feedback.
Yeah, definitely. So when you think about all these AI tools and, inside companies, I mean, obviously we're seeing it. I can't even keep up with all the ones we see in the consumer space, but even inside an organization, it seems like there's, every single day, there's like another dozen shiny objects that people are, trying out. How do you keep up with everything that's happening in the space?
Well, it helps to have a co-founder because between me and my co-founder and my husband's really, really glued into this space. I mean, I see stuff myself and then I'm constantly being sent things. I think when people know that this is your space, they see anything that's somewhat related and they're like, hey, have you seen this? And either I've seen it or I haven't, and they've now put it on my radar. But yeah, there's a ton. It feels like, especially in like the meeting intelligence space, there's a ton of stuff that's like a ton of activity in that space. And now with Gen AI being so ubiquitous, like the wrappers around OpenAI are just everywhere. That's a tough game.
Is there anything, I guess you don't have to give me any specific names, but I'm just curious if there's things that help you as a CEO, as a co-founder. Are there specific, types of tools that help you like day to day?
I use ChatGPT pretty frequently. We use it as a company pretty frequently, even just in like problem solving stuff. It's great at that. You have to know how to use it though, right? Like you can't take what it says at face value. You have to kind of push it and mold it and direct it in order to get where you're going. But it's super helpful for us in a number of ways, both technical and more creative. That's the primary tool we use. Like I've tried a number of tools, like when it comes to marketing and content, I've tried a bunch of tools that help with content creation and scheduling and planning and posting. And I don't find, I think those things end up taking just as much time, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And so I don't use them.
I'm realizing that myself.
Yeah.
I will say like Riverside platform we're on right now has added some pretty cool little tools, but some of them, as they warn you, are experimental. Mm-hmm. You could definitely spend a lot of time playing around with some things, but I think just got to focus on some of the things that are really, the most relevant to the things that you're trying to do. And it's worth trying one or two of them just to see if it, shaves in.
Yeah. I mean, we do use Zinc.ai. I use that for my talk show and that's good. I do have an assistant though, because Zinc will create specific little excerpts from the sessions we record, but I still need my assistant to go through and make sure everything looks good. And then I always do a final pass to make sure everything looks good. I think having the human in the loop is just so essential that it's still going to cost a little more money or time to make sure that the AI is not, stripping your content of personality.
For sure. Let's say I wanted to take a recording from 50 minutes to 30 minutes. There's no way, at least today, that an AI would have enough context and know enough about how I would edit to be able to do that on my behalf. And, in the AI's defense, I couldn't hire somebody off of Upwork or Fiverr and have them do that to my satisfaction either. Right. So, Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to experiment, but you've also got to understand limitations of anyone or anything that doesn't have full context or, live inside my brain. So, Rachel, one question I ask all my guests is, as you noticed with the name of my podcast, Elevate Your AIQ, curious what comes to mind when you hear that phrase or the acronym.
Definitely. It's funny because I was thinking about this and I was like, definitely, obviously you think about, it's like your artificial intelligence,
Right.
Your intelligence around AI, right? AI or AI. So I think that's what comes to mind for me is obviously just like your level of understanding and comfort within this new technology. That's what comes to mind for me. I just think it's funny because it's like intelligence.
I see other people using like AI readiness and AI literacy and things like that. And I just thought, well, I should definitely clarify that's not intended to be a score, but, people have to be ready. Like you have to have the right sort of mindset. You have to not approach this with any kind of sort of defeatist attitude. Like there's just too much to learn. I'm just going to ride out the rest of my, career. Hopefully, keep my head down and not be automated out of a job or whatever. But the point is you've got to learn how to work with it. I think that's one of the things that I think what you're building at Virtual Sapiens, it's like, how do we augment our human potential and human capability and make us better at our jobs, help us make better decisions. I mean, that's to me where the real value is, not, automating things, although that does hopefully free us up and give us more time to focus on the ability to execute on those higher value tasks, not just execute those tasks, but at the same time, I just think it's got to be human centric, and then augmenting our capabilities and our intelligence and our ability to derive insight from data. That's where the real value is. So not everyone has to know everything about AI. We're not asking you to becoming a data scientist or knowing any of the technical details, but you've got to know how to use it, how to, prompt it, how to get value, from it. And I think that's a big part of, that type of AI, literacy and some basic AI skills is what I hope everyone takes the opportunity to go down that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's here.
Yeah, it's here. It's not going away.
Ignore it at your peril.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Rachel, it's been great to catch up and really enjoyed the conversation as always. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right. That's it for today, everyone. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again, Rachel.